Hello, my darlings. Mother Raven here with a fabulous story by CynicHappy entitled The Little Melting Girl. When I was 8 years old, I was badly burnt in a car fire. My single mother had been driving me to school when she lost control of her Toyota Camry on the icy January road and went crashing into a ditch. The car caught fire, and Mum managed to drag me out, but the damage had already been done. I had sustained second to third degree burns on 50% of my body. My limbs had gotten the worst of it. Mum herself was unharmed, save for bruising on her ribs and a cut across her nose. I spent the next 4 months in the burn unit at British Columbia's Children's Hospital, and the place quickly became a second home. The doctors worked tirelessly to save me. I underwent a total of 50 operations, including skin grafts and the amputation of all 5 fingers on each hand. I had an endless stream of visitors, but rarely was my mother among them. One morning, about a week into my hospital stay, my dad stopped by with a bouquet of colorful tulips and a blue balloon. His girlfriend Jenny came with him. Dad had been divorced from Mum for about 2 years, but it had been an amicable split, and he was still very much involved in my life. "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy come to see me?" I asked. My words were garbled, given that I could barely move my burnt lips, but Dad seemed to understand. "Oh, honey," he sighed, ruffling what was left of my charred hair. "Mummy loves you more than anyone else in the world. That's why she doesn't come by very often. It hurts her to see you hurt." "But I miss her." "She misses you too, honey, but Mummy has some problems. It's difficult for a child your age to understand." "Is she sick?" No, honey," Jenny piped up. She bent down and kissed my bandaged cheek. "Well, just like your dad said, it's hard to explain." I knew, even back then, that Mom wasn't quite right in the head. I believe that's why Dad left her, but he still cared about her a great deal. Not once since the divorce had I heard him say a single negative word about her. "Will Mommy get better?" I asked. "She might never be quite normal, Julia, but she'll get better. She'll always be your Mummy." I never resented my mother for her absence. I guess I was a lot more understanding than most kids my age. Besides, Mom more than made up for it, sending me care packages and letters saying how much she loved me. She promised to throw me a party when I came home, complete with cake and dancing. I believe it was Mom's love that got me through the pain. After 4 long months, I was finally allowed to go home. My burns were still healing, leaving me with tight, warped skin that itched and throbbed every minute of the day. My hands had been reduced to bulbous stumps at the end of each arm. I was stuck in a wheelchair and had to wear compression garments to reduce scarring. Still, I was home, and that made it all worth it. As promised, Mum threw me a party. Family, friends, and neighbors came to celebrate my recovery. I couldn't dance, but I had a great time anyway. Mum kept kissing me and telling me how much she loved me. "Julia, you are a fighter. I'm so proud of you." She smiled, her blue eyes glittering, but I had noticed the blue half-moons beneath them, as well as her hollowed-out cheekbones and threads of silver woven into her shiny auburn hair. She was still so beautiful, but looked older than her 35 years. That night I woke up in pain, my skin itching as if I had fire ants crawling all over me, a deep, phantom ache in my amputated fingers. I opened my mouth to call out for Mom, but the compression mask on my face and the taut skin beneath made moving my lips painful. I tried to sit up, but it hurt too much. A whimper escaped me and a salty tear rolled down my cheeks. Then I sensed a presence, something watching me from a dark corner. It didn't feel malevolent, but it made my spine tingle. Glancing nervously over my shoulder, I was shocked to see a dark figure standing in a corner, motionless save for the gentle rise and fall of their chest as they breathed. Quickly, before I could lose my nerve, I reached over and switched on my bedside lamp. A weak yellow glow broke through the shadows, and there was a sharp intake of breath as the figure shrank back at the light. She was a little girl, no older than myself. She wore a yellow t-shirt and flowery pink shorts. She was grotesquely deformed. Her flesh appeared to be melting off her body, hanging in heavy folds and bags. It was blackened in areas, pink and raw in others. She was completely bald, and not only that, but her scalp had been charred away, revealing a pearl-white skull beneath. Her eyes were impossibly large, lacking eyelids, and had such heavy cataracts. Her pupils were invisible. Her arms were shriveled and curled up grotesquely at her sides. But the worst part was her mouth. Her lower jaw hung down at an impossible angle and seemed to have fused to her chest, leaving her face in a permanent scream. I nearly screamed myself. I'd never seen anything so horrible, and it scared me shitless. But before I could make a sound, the girl raised a shriveled hand and brought it to her gaping mouth, as if trying to shush me. I shrunk back against the headboard, shaking as this mysterious apparition approached me. It appeared she was trying to speak, but her frozen jaw made that physically impossible. She placed her hand on my shoulder, and when I forced myself to look into her eyes, I saw compassion. I saw love. "Who are you?" I whimpered. She gently pushed me back into a reclining position, tucked the covers around my scarred, wounded body, and smoothed back my hair. Then she turned and walked silently out of the room, leaving the door open just a crack. I was shaken, but the pain was gone, replaced by the pleasant sensation of being bathed in warm water. Somehow, despite my fear, I fell asleep. I never told my mom what I'd seen. She was already so shaken up over my accident. I didn't want to give her more to worry about. But I couldn't stop thinking about the little melting girl, and part of me wanted to see her again. Days later, I returned to school. My friends were all delighted to have me back, but many kids avoided me, and some were downright mean. I was still learning how to perform everyday tasks without fingers, which only added a new layer of challenges to the adjustment. During this time, Mom seemed somewhat out of touch with reality. I often caught her staring into space or humming to herself. Sometimes she would look at me and cry. Dad and Jenny came over a lot to help, and Dad tried talking Mom into seeing a therapist, but she always refused. 3 years passed, and I made remarkable progress. I began walking again, and my burns healed even better than my doctors expected. Mom met a wonderful man named David, and they got married when I was 11. Now I had a stepfather and stepsister, and I adored them both. By then, I had mostly forgotten about the little melting girl. Around that time, I was entering puberty, which can cripple the self-esteem of even the most beautiful girls. As well as my injuries has healed, I still had a lot of scarring and was missing my left breast. My appearance made me a prime target for bullying. One day when I was walking home from school, a group of older girls followed me home and threw rocks at me. I ran into the house crying and shut myself in my room. I sobbed for over an hour, feeling like a total freak, hideous and unlovable. As I lay on my bed, my face buried in my pillow, I felt a hand smooth back my hair. Mom and David were still at work, and my sister Ava was at band practice. Alarmed, I rolled over and met her cloudy gaze. The melting girl. She still wore the same outfit and hadn't aged a bit. Her appearance wasn't nearly as shocking the second time around, but I couldn't stifle a frightened squeal. "It's you!" I gasped. She nodded, before reaching into the pocket of her shorts and removing a tissue. I sniffled and blew my nose. "What are you doing here?" The melting girl walked over to my desk and scribbled something on a sheet of notebook paper. She held it up so that I could read. "Kids can be cruel," it said. "I'm so ugly," I whimpered. "I'm a monster." She shook her head, then jotted down a second note. "A few scars mean nothing. You've got beautiful blue eyes, gorgeous, shiny golden hair, and the perfect bone structure. You are amazing." I suddenly felt pretty shitty for sobbing over my own deformities to this girl who barely looked human anymore. "Are you just saying that to make me feel better?" She shook her head, then placed her hand over her heart. I didn't know what that meant, but I guess it must be a sign of her sincerity. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Are you a ghost?" Once again, she left my room without a word. I tried chasing after her, but she was gone. After searching the house top to bottom, I figured she must be a ghost, or that she had died in the fire that warped her appearance. But who was she? What happened? Why did only I see her? This time, I told Mom. I left out most details, but stated I believed a little girl ghost was haunting our house. She went whiter than the moon, and her eyes grew shimmery with tears. But she forced a laugh and said, "Oh, Julia, such an imagination." She seemed so upset that I didn't dare press the matter. But the following day after school, I made a surprise visit to Dad and Jenny's place. "Hi, Julia," Jenny greeted me at the door, her 2-year-old baby girl on her hip. "What a pleasant surprise. Is my dad home?" "Yes, he's in his office. I'll go get him." Dad worked from home as a graphics designer and often became so engrossed in his work he forgot to eat. But I knew he'd want to see me. After catching up over iced tea, I told Dad I wanted to ask him a question about Mom. I reminded him that I was almost 12 years old and had a right to know, and that he had to be honest with me. "Okay, Julia, I'll do my best. What is it?" "What happened in Mom's past?" I asked him. "Why is she so strange sometimes?" Dad hesitated, biting his lip, and I lost my temper. "Tell me, damn it!" I snapped. "Julia, calm down." Jenny put a steadying hand on my shoulder. Dad flushed and rubbed his temples. "Baby, I'm sorry," he said. "I'll tell you everything I know, okay?" "Okay." I took a deep breath. "Okay." Dad poured himself more iced tea and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Even I don't know a whole lot about it. When I met your mother, she was an orphan at 21 and claimed not to have anyone except her grandmother. It wasn't until a whole year into our relationship that she finally confessed there had been a terrible accident in her childhood. She refused to elaborate. I sank back against the couch cushion, defeated. So you don't know either? No, I'm sorry, honey. Would she tell me if I asked her? I don't think that's a good idea, Julia, said Dad. Jenny, sitting next to me on the couch, nodded. I left their house in a frustrated daze, feeling even more confused than before. The mystery of Mum and the little melting girl was like a constant itch that couldn't be scratched, and the idea that I might never get any answers infuriated me. This time, 5 years passed before I saw her again. At 16, my confidence had improved. I had friends, good grades, and a serious boyfriend who accepted me as I was, scars and all. That said, I still had to deal with bullies on a regular basis. But now, I could stand up for myself. One day at lunch, my friends and I were discussing the upcoming school dance and what we would wear. Rachel Newton, one of the resident mean girls, sneered at me as she and her friends walked by. You better not wear anything too short, Crispy. No one wants to look at your ugly legs. Leave her alone, Rachel. My friend Clara stood up, hands on hips. What? Don't pretend it isn't true. You're such a bitch, Rachel, I snapped. Ever consider seeking professional help? She scowled. Ever considered plastic surgery? It would make looking at you so much easier. I punched her in the nose. She began to scream as if I'd just gutted her with a butcher knife, alerting a teacher. She sent me to the principal's office, and while Mrs. Radcliffe was sympathetic, she wouldn't let me off the hook. Striking another student is against the rules, Julia. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to punish you. She then told me I'd have to clean up the football field every day after school for a week. I understood that I'd been wrong to hit Rachel, but I was still pissed. That afternoon, the sky filled with dark gray clouds matching my mood. As I toiled away, picking up garbage and stuffing it into large plastic bags, Rachel and her little posse approached me. Julia, you bitch! Rachel's nose was purple and swollen, dried blood crusting her nostrils. Look what you did to me! Aw, you're upset over losing your precious modeling career? I taunted. Rachel's eyes flashed dangerously, and she lunged at me, knocking me to the soggy grass. Rachel! One of her friends yelled. Back off! I rolled onto my belly and tried to push myself into a kneeling position, but Rachel kicked me in the ribs, knocking me down again. I don't think picking up garbage is punishment enough, Crispy. Rachel brought her foot down on my back, pinning me in place. What do you think, girls? Hell yeah! Get her, Rachel! Stop it! She's had enough! I began thrashing beneath Rachel's foot, trying to throw her off balance. Dirt filled my mouth. My spine felt seconds away from snapping. I sensed Rachel's fury, her intent on hurting me. She stooped down and grabbed a handful of my hair, wrenching my head back and raising her fist, ready to land a punch. I was alone at this girl's mercy, and I couldn't fight back. Help! I whispered. Rachel's grip suddenly fell away. She staggered back, her eyes the size of dinner plates, mouth hanging open. Her friends looked equally stunned. Oh my gosh, what is that? I followed her appalled gaze to a melted, deformed figure standing 20 feet away. The little melting girl's cloudy eyes were blazing with anger, and her blackened fist kept clenching and unclenching. I was so overjoyed I wanted to cry. What the freak? Rachel screeched again. Who is that? The little girl let out an enraged scream and charged like a raging bull. My tormentors took off into the mist, shrieking like banshees. The girl walked over and helped me to my feet. "Thank you," I breathed. In her eyes, I saw her words. "Let's go home." She held my hand until we were a block away from the house. Then she hugged me and walked away. This time, I told Mom everything. When I described the girl's appearance, she burst into tears. "Oh, God, oh my God, Julia," she sobbed. "Mom, what is it?" She pulled me into a crushing hug, her chest heaving as she fought for air. "That girl, she's my sister." I was frozen. "What?" Mom wiped her eyes. "Oh, honey, I guess I can't hold it back any longer." Finally, after 16 years, I got to know my mother. She grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan with her sister, Sarah, and their parents. They lived a happy life until an arsonist set the barn on fire. The girls were inside at the time. In a frantic attempt to escape, Sarah fell and broke her leg. Mom ran to get help, but by then, it was too late. The fire had spread out of control and Sarah couldn't be saved. The fire completely broke Mom. She didn't speak for almost a year, and 4 years later her parents were killed in a car accident. Mom never recovered emotionally. To this day, I can only imagine what she went through. When you got hurt, it brought back so many terrible memories. I couldn't face it. I was a coward, Julia. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I kissed her cheek. You're the best mother, and I love you. She wiped her nose. I've seen Sarah a few times since she's died, but I convinced myself I was dreaming. But it seems like she's watching over you, too. Like a guardian angel? She is a guardian angel. That night, I prayed for the first time in years and thanked God for sending down Sarah. 21 years have passed since that day. I have a successful career. I'm married. I have children. I still see Sarah every now and then, but I don't need her protection so much anymore. I've grown strong and confident. I've come a long way. I can't explain Sarah's presence in my life, and I guess I don't need to. I'm just so thankful to have her around. She's been there for me during my darkest hours, protecting me from a cruel world when I was at my most vulnerable. My only regret is that Sarah, unlike me, never got a second chance at life. So quoth this raven.